Hey everybody, good morning. It is day 114 of spiritual healthcare and Friday. It's Friday, y'all. That's always good. So welcome everybody, and I want to continue today the conversation that we started yesterday about negative entities and kids, and how to break the cycle, whether it be an entity or whether it be toxic people in your kid's environment. How do we break the cycle and start to change it? And what the difference is between girls and boys, and how the dynamic with predatory entities and with people as well is very, very different. So good morning, everyone. It is good to see all of you. As I say, day 114. Day 114. Good morning to Kaz. Good morning, everyone. It's good to see everyone, and yeah, like the last, I think yesterday we covered so much, and today we're going to continue that conversation, because I think it is so important. If you've got kids in your life, or whether you were a kid whose parent was kind of absent and checked out, or have maybe passed away, or whatever the circumstances might be, and how the paranormal, how negative entities, how even negative people can start to fill that hole when there is a parent missing. And what can we do about it? What do we do about that? So today's going to be interesting. We talked yesterday about the phenomenon of girls who seek out the paranormal and things like that from that place of lack, or end up with one of the imaginary friends that parents are always dreading, that turn out to be something either malicious or predatory or something like that. And maybe it's a living person. Maybe it's not a negative entity at all. Maybe it's a living person you're dealing with. But we're going to go into that today a little bit more, and start to examine how we can deal with it, as well as what it looks like as adults, what we can do to start to heal that, and whatnot as adults too. Good morning to Sally. Happy Friday to you too. Yeah, it is raining here. It is pouring rain. We were supposed to get this huge thunderstorm last night, and it didn't happen. It was crazy. We had this huge dark front move in, and everybody thought we were going to get slammed because it was so hot yesterday. And now nothing happened. Nothing happened. Now it's raining, and it's like 10 degrees cooler. So I don't know. That's Alberta though for you. It's all over the place. So I hope you guys had a really great day yesterday, and were able to maybe think about how this was applying to you. I mean, everybody's got a different story when it comes to their parents and their experiences as kids. And and there's kind of an epidemic with a lot of kids and paranormal or spiritual experiences where they simply weren't heard. They just weren't heard. And that's become, over the years, it's a painful hole for a lot of people, because when they come to their parents and they expect to be believed, or they expect the parent to take charge or take some leadership, and they don't, and that gap becomes quite large. It really does create a gap between the parents and the kids. So we're going to talk about that today. As I say, we talked yesterday about the daughter side of this, and today we're going to talk about the boys, the boys that deal with this, because it's very different. It's very different for them often, and the reason why they seek this stuff out can be very different too. So we're gonna get into all of that. So yesterday, just to give a recap for those of you guys who missed yesterday, we talked about the world phenomenon of the daddyless daughters, and how oftentimes that hole of unworthiness, being unloved, feeling unimportant, and living to that label ends up either causing kids to seek out like a spiritual connection from a place of lack, which ends up attracting negative entities or negative people. Sometimes it's living people, and realizing that often these kids or adults are asking for something from a place of lack, and the universe is responding and will fill that hole. And whenever you're asking from a place of lack, you kind of get the equivalent to that, and it's never a good thing. We talked yesterday about often wanting to replay the past, and going to search out things that can fill that gap for us, and the importance of a father figure in a daughter's life at a young age to show the fact that, you know, when you've got, whether it be a negative entity that's trying to build some sort of toxic relationship with your kid, or whether it be a toxic, another toxic male, living male, like in your kid's experience, if they don't have that to either a father figure or somebody to look at, to go, you know, to compare that relationship to, then oftentimes they don't realize that they're settling for less than they are. So we talked yesterday about the wolf, I titled The Wolf in Sheep's Clothing, which is a very specific manifestation behavior from negative entities that basically what they do is they come into a kid's experience and sometimes an adult's experience, pretending that there are something that will fill that hole, fill that gap within that person, whether it be a lost child or a parental figure or something like that. But they will bluff an identity. And they will mirror whatever that person needs, and to gain trust, to manipulate, and whatnot. And they put on this bluff for quite a long time until they can kind of infiltrate a household or business or whatever it is. So that's what we're talking about today. And yesterday, as I say, we talked about the girl side of things. And with boys, it can be very, very different. Lots of people know some sort of fatherless son somewhere. Maybe you're married to him. Maybe you've got a young son and you're a single mom, or whatever that looks like. And I think the first thing we really have to do is, when we see kids that are building a relationship with an imaginary friend, or what turns out to be a negative entity or something like that, we have to understand that the child has a hole somewhere in their soul, and that's filling something. It's filling something. If we take a look at, very famous movie, which was based off a true story, of course, which was The Exorcist. And we'll use the movie example because I think more people are familiar with the film than they are with the true story. But in the film, of course, we know that the little girl Reagan ends up, she moves to this strange town with her mom. Her mom's in a movie. She's a big actress, and she ends up working all the time, right? So Reagan's kind of left by herself with her nanny, and her father has checked right out. Her father has divorced her mom. They're in a big fight. It's a custody battle. It's not nice. But the father's checked out. He forgets her birthday. He doesn't call her. He doesn't, he's just done. And, you see her in multiple scenes struggling with this, and next thing you know, she ends up finding the Ouija board in the basement, and she gets talking to a figure by the name of Captain Howdy, and Captain Howdy gives her that parental figure, right? He gives her that parental figure, or it gives her that parental figure, under the guise of this character, this male character. So, and of course, turns out later, in the film, it turns out to be this entity called Pazuzu, and so on and so forth. But it's not so far off from the real case. So when we look at Roland Doe, who was the name that they gave the true individual who went through this, he was in a very similar situation where he lost what he felt was a parental figure. It was an aunt. It was a surrogate parental figure. It was an aunt. But he ended up feeling like he was speaking with the aunt, who he believed was coming through the Ouija board. But of course, he was grieving. He's in this negative headspace. He's not talking with the aunt at all. He's talking with something completely different. And it's putting off on this sort of bluff intelligence. So with boys specifically, holes in our hearts and things like that can suggest to them there is an inadequacy about them. Okay, so it's a little bit different than girls. But boys oftentimes, unlike girls, don't really want to talk about this stuff. They really don't. And we often don't hear boys come to us with vulnerability in the same way that we hear girls. In fact, we usually don't even let them finish. We don't. And we don't let them finish as adults either. Women have this issue with interrupting them. And often, what we'll do is we'll have, especially with boys, and I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is in parents' heads between boys and girls with this issue, but oftentimes that will result in some sort of punishment. The boy's been bad, or they've been, they've done something, we treat them like they've done something wrong. And it teaches these kids to not open up to us again. If they're receiving punishment for saying, look, I sought out this connection with this entity, it's not going well, I'm scared of the imaginary friend or something like that, we tend to turn on them and get them in trouble. How could you do this? How could you talk? How could you bring this into the house? And we teach them very, very quickly that they should not open up to us again, which is a huge problem, especially when it comes to something like an entity like this, where it's already trying to build a relationship with the kid. They're already trying to make that bond a little bit tighter. And when we come at these kids like this, especially boys who are looking for belonging, they're looking for a bond, they're looking for all of these different connections, oftentimes connections with a male figure that they can connect with and look up to. The worst thing that we can possibly do is start to turn them away. Boys often bury their emotions so much deeper than girls do. And one of the reasons is because we mess them up really early. And we start with one lesson, which is boys don't cry. You need to grow up, man up, shut up, stuff it. Boys shouldn't be, whiny about this stuff. Boys should be leaders. We hammer them with this message over and over again. And then when something happens, or they run into trouble with either a paranormal experience, or whether they run into trouble with maybe it's a gang at school, or another predator in their life or something like that, then we want them to open up and tell us. And that's lesson number 2, except they haven't unlearned lesson number 1. So we end up creating this really horrible paradox where, they're taught to stuff it. They're taught to be quiet. They're taught to just completely close off, man up, suck it up and deal with it. And then we want them to do the complete opposite thing, and then we get angry at them that they don't do it. So how we are dealing with this, especially when it comes to the paranormal, I think is really important. And it's something we've got to take a look at as a society, and like what we're teaching these people. So one of the ways I think that boys seem to look at this, from all of the kids and adults that I've interviewed, is that they want you to be able to see their failure and still love them the same. They want to know that they can open up about a situation like this, even if it's against your spiritual beliefs, and not lose your love in the process of it. So they want the ability to turn around and say, okay, like, this is what's happened to me, and sometimes the parents, I'm telling you, sometimes the parents are even more frightened than the kids are about what's going on in the house. Like, oftentimes, I've had some crazy cases, you guys, where I've had situations where literally the parent is so frightened, they will lock their kid in the room with an entity and like know that that's happening so that they don't have to deal with it. And the kid kind of becomes this almost bait. And they'll just leave the kid in there because at least it's occupied. Like, it's pretty crazy where this stuff will go. And we don't think that, we think parents are always out to protect their kids, but this industry gets really crazy when people's reactions, when it comes to fear, people lose their heads absolutely completely. I've dealt with a number of cases where kids have come to their parents with sometimes it's not a negative entity at all. Sometimes it's psychic abilities, and the ability to perceive, other realities and spirits and communicate and all of these things. And again, it's like they get met with punishment, or they're met with, if you just can be quiet. If you can be quiet, then, we'll get you the new toy. Like, don't talk about this, and we'll give you the new video game. And because it's frightening the parents act from this place of fear, don't acknowledge what the kid is going through, and then you end up with this really bad situation where now you've got the kids not going to open up to you about anything. And the kids they're literally just going to close off, and they end up feeling right back at the beginning as unwanted, unloved, unimportant, and that they should, be men and suck it up. So we've got to understand kids go looking for this kind of thing for different reasons. And oftentimes it's to fill voids. So one of the things that what we can really do when we've got a kid in this type of situation is to understand that connection with non-physical, that drive to be connected with source energy, is a positive one. This is a positive thing. But doing it from that place of lack ends up with your kid or yourself or whoever it is in a bad relationship with something non-physical that you don't want. So you want to be able to teach your kids and teach yourselves and teach your spouse and teach whoever it is, encourage them to find the best feeling place they can, heal up that stuff to be able to fill the void first, heal that stuff up, and then go seeking the relationship with non-physical energy, because then you're building a relationship with something that is positive and joyful, and you get the connections that you want. So often I think parents really find, and this is a very old school way of thinking, but I think it's so pervasive, is that we end up getting very, very attached to the idea that it is all out of our control, that we don't have control over the experiences that are coming into our life. So we start to see the paranormal as something very unpredictable. And that's not the case at all. And when we start to understand that there's a correlation between how we're feeling, whether we've got a big broken piece inside of us that is looking to be filled back up, when we can understand that, we can start to see what we're going to attract into our experience. And when we begin to understand that when we can heal some of this stuff up, all of a sudden we end up in control of the experiences that we end up having. So we have to take a look as well as to what negative entities look at when they see a situation like this. Because when I worked for 17 years on profiling some of these intelligences, and it's a phenomenal venture into the paranormal when you can start to remove the labels as to what these things are and start to understand what it is their motivations are, what encourages them, what connects them, what spurs on situations like this. And oftentimes what I've found, which is something that tends to be very unexpected for a lot of investigators, is that oftentimes these negative entities are looking for the leader in the family. They're looking for the person that's at the head of the totem pole. And they really don't like chaos, which seems very strange because their behavior tends to look very chaotic, but it's not. There's definite patterns to it. And they will look for the leader in the household. And when that leader is not found, when they can't find that person that's giving orders, or that's has that commanding energy, or is has the masterfulness over a household in a positive way, what ends up happening is that they end up taking that spot on the totem pole, and they will run amok. They go nuts with that because nobody's filling that gap. It's very similar to dogs. They'll do the same thing. As soon as you bring a dog into a house, if there's nobody there that they can follow, they automatically take over that role, and then you've got this out of control puppy that's running all over the house. And it's very similar. They're looking for a pack environment. So when they don't see that, and they know they can get away with it, then they'll get away with it. So when we start to understand this, when we start to understand that there's, when there is a role that is available, especially with kids, when there's a role that is available, somebody or something will fill that hole. And we have to be, as I was saying yesterday, we have to be very, very conscious of the fact that we have control when it comes to our kids, what voice is in their ear, right? And we want it to be us. We want it to be, somebody with good morals, with good direction, with good, good intentions for their life and their future and investing in them. Because so often what we don't realize is that these kids are looking for somebody to invest in them, and because they're often not getting it from their parents. Their parents are not investing in them. So when they have something or somebody come along who is investing in them, even if it's false, they immediately will gravitate to that, and it becomes a real thing and a real attraction for them. So we have to be conscious of the fact that let's be in their ear first, and so that we can turn around and stand up and be that role model. So if they run into something, no matter what it is, they can at least have a comparison. They have a contrast to go, you know what, my dad wouldn't put up with this. There's no way. You can't treat me this way, because they wouldn't, something's off. They wouldn't put up with this. They do here. Kids do here. But part of the healing for situations like this with the wolf in sheep's clothing entities that come off this way, is the healing for the parents as well, because the parents often, when I sit down with them, feel extremely out of control. They feel like they have lost control over the situation, because by the time they usually find out about it, what happens is the kid is already bonded with the entity or the predator or whoever it is, and they start to feel extremely lost, because every time they go to turn around and say, hey, you're not allowed to speak to this thing anymore, of course the kid becomes more wedged in, digs their heels in and says, no, like, how dare you take this away from me? Because that's where they're getting their affirmation and their comfort from at that point. So you can't be doing that. We can't be pulling at that bond. The idea is that we have to learn to partner with the kid, because at that point, whether you've got a predator, negative entity, whatever, they start to see that partnering, and they realize that connection with that kid is going to get less and less and less and less. So we have to understand that partnering with them is the key for something like this. And interestingly, often when I've watched this dynamic happen in haunted places and in haunted homes, the entity is very quick to leave. It's very quick to move on. Within 24 hours, it usually says, I'm out. Because it knows. It's just aware. And, it knows the game. It's a very specific behavior pattern, and it's always really interesting to watch it play out, but it doesn't take very long. Usually one conversation with the parents and it's done. I wrote a little bit about it in my book, Teaching the Living, and I will read you guys a little bit about what I'd said about this subject. So here we go. The insidious nature of this behavior becomes a serious problem when the person becomes dependent on the relationship, despite the abuses that might be occurring around it, either towards the family or individual. If the individual in the relationship does not see the behavior for what it is, there is little that can be done to assist it. Often bluffs will extend to audio recordings as well. For example, we have recorded words that appear to be language. They seem to have context, deliberate pronunciation, and fluidity. However, upon analysis, it's not a language at all. It takes time and study to determine this, however, wasting the investigator's time and energy on what is simply another distraction. Sometimes this approach can often take a turn, and people begin to think that there must be more than one entity in the home, the lost spirit and an attacker. However, we have not found this to be the case, and this becomes, yet again, another point of confusion that wastes time and effort. And it's just, we have to understand that it does become about distraction. Marge is asking, what's the best way to approach a small child who you frequently find talking to someone who isn't there? That's a really great question, Marge. And again, I think it's being able to partner with them, and don't assume necessarily that it's negative either. There has been so many incredible stories of, these kids that are now creating new relationships with their grandparents who have passed away, or their parents who have passed away, or, there's these great bonds that can be nurtured. But I think the idea is to just keep it light and ask them, get interested, get curious. Who is this? Introduce me to them. Let me know who this is. I want to meet them too. And you'll get a bead really, really quickly on what the dynamic is between the two of them. If the child comes back, for example, and starts to tell you that, like, they don't like you, or, I'm not allowed to speak to you, or some sort of negative thing like that. We got to remember that isolation is the number one weapon of any abuser. So as soon as that relationship starts to become secret or hidden, or, I'm not allowed to talk about it, anything like that, then something's not quite right. But oftentimes it's something that's so positive. Kids are so much more adaptive, and so less frightened of this stuff than adults. It's really crazy. We think that it's going to be, it's always going to be something that's super negative, but that's oftentimes a parental tape rather than it being a reality. So I think the more that we can, nurture that relationship and teach them how to build the proper ones. If something is scaring them, being able to say, look, like, you guys, you have the control over this. What can we do to get you in the best headspace possible? What can we do that brings you happiness? And what a great moment to be able to connect with your kid about this kind of thing. To be able to teach, it's such a brilliant teaching moment. So that they know that, when someone passes away, that relationship doesn't have to end. It can be rebuilt, and to be able to show them that them healing, them feeling good, them finding ways to improve their own experience will bring them closer to that person, is such an empowering state of being when they realize they get to choose the emotion and the thought, and that they will get back whatever it is that they're feeling. I mean, man, can you imagine what it would have been, had we been that age and known this stuff? So it's such a great teaching moment, and be able to nurture the positive relationships. So when you've got a kid that's coming to you and saying, I saw grandma, or I saw, a parent, or I saw, a sibling that's passed away, or even if it's somebody that seems like they're just on the up and up, looking out for them, or whatever the situation might be, the ability to turn around and say, hey, this is like, this is really cool. We are not alone. You are not alone when you are getting on the bus to go to school. You're not alone when you've got to take the big test, and you're not alone when you're upset and crying in the middle of the night, and you're not by yourself. And to be able to learn that at such a young age is such a wonderfully empowering thing. So something to take away from all of that. So that being said, everybody, we are slowly running out of time, and I'm looking for our affirmations. Where did they go? They're over here somewhere. They're like under my big pile of stuff, probably. They're under my big pile of stuff. Where are they? Okay, they have disappeared. Well, isn't that just funny? Oh, there they are. Okay, hold on. We found them. All right. So, everybody take a breath. Let's do some affirmations. It is Friday, everyone. Everyone take a breath. I'm a channel of peace and well-being, and my need for peace is abundantly met. I unconditionally accept, love, and appreciate myself and who I am. I recognize and am grateful for the abundance that is constantly flowing into my life, which I can choose to allow or not. I feel with every breath a sense of peace and love. I help others by maintaining and tending to my connection with Source as much as possible. This well-being is accessible to me, even in a sea of uncertainty. At this moment, all is well. I'm able to liberate myself from my past and live with peace and serenity. I can see and appreciate all the beauty and abundance of the life around me. I'm able to embrace love while letting go of fear. And I find peace with the soothing silence of my inner being. And everybody take a breath. Thank you guys so so much for another awesome week of spiritual healthcare. I'll be taking a little bit of time next week. I'm building a few different projects actually right now, including I got a shout out from a brand new paranormal TV show that is going to I don't know when it's coming out, and I don't know if they're going to have me working with them, or I don't know what's going on with that. But anyway, I've been chatting with them back and forth over the last 24 hours or so. So spiritual healthcare is going to be back on Wednesday, so that I can get a handle on whatever the heck is going on. So what day is that? That is the 12th. So we are going to be back on August the 12th, you guys, so that I've got some time to get a handle on all of this crazy work that's now pouring in over the last 48 hours. It's just been insane. So we will be back, as I say, August the 12th, guys. I will be posting reminders and posting lots of stuff and content in between. Because this is becoming a thing, and hopefully it will result in another TV show for you guys as well. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. I don't know. The industry is so weird, because it's like, sometimes you'll think something's in the bag and then it's not in the bag, and then you've got 5 other projects going on, and some things will get picked up and other things won't. And you can put out 200 ideas and have 5 picked up. It's crazy. It's just crazy. So anyway, so August the 12th, you guys, we will be back, and lots to think about, lots to talk about. And I hope this week was good for everyone. Have a wonderful weekend, you guys, and I will see you guys on August the 12th. Lots of peace. Bye, everyone.